So welcome back to lesson 25 of the BiOptimizers, Healing Health and High Performance, your complete guide to biological optimization. And today we're going to talk about a huge topic, and that is the acid-alkaline balance and the 80-20 rule. If you're out there in the health food world, there is a lot of talk about this acid-alkaline balance. Whoops, so let's get this out there for a second. We'll talk about this acid and then alkaline. Now, I do a very extensive report on this, and I actually demonstrate a bunch of liquids and alkalinity and pH balance and those sort of things, but you can check back to one of our earlier lessons and some other ones later on, because we can't cover everything in this. But I want to give you the basics of it. And the reality is our bodies are pretty much set up to be 80% alkaline and 20% acid. So some people out there, there's a lot of different people like, oh, it's only alkaline. We only want to eat alkaline foods. We want alkaline this. And I'm like, well, that's not entirely true, because what about amino acids? What about essential fatty acids? What about ascorbic acid, which is vitamin C? But let me make this nice and simple. So just so you know, the scale runs from 0 up to 14. That's the pH scale. And the human body, your blood, 7 being neutral. The human body, your blood is right about here. I like to say perfect is 7.365. And you'll have a little variance of the range on that. Okay? That's your perfect blood pH. How do you remember it? 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Of course, it can go up to a little bit, about 7.4, maybe down a little bit to 7.2 or 7.1. You get outside that range, you're dead. And your body will buffer the acids that are in your diet or your lifestyle with a thing called bicarbonates. Bicarbonate buffers, actually, which is a fancy name for, guess what? Minerals. Things like calcium and magnesium, things like that. Okay? And I'll put et al. There's other ones out there, but we won't get into the details today. So largely in part, we're designed to eat more foods that are on the alkaline side of the diet scale. What are those things? Those are like green leafy vegetables. Pretty much all the vegetables are in that range. And things that are acid are things that are like sugar. Sugar is acid, okay? So that produces acid. So there's also foods that kind of go into a gray area. So a lot of fruits, like say lemon, which tastes very acidic, are what they call alkaline forming foods. Okay, so that's another topic. So it's not just all about acid or alkaline, it's what is the response inside the body. Now, again, the problem or the challenge of today's lifestyles that we're dealing with is that we're eating diets that are about 80% acid and 20% alkaline, or 20%. This, as you can see, is virtually the reverse. And I had a friend of mine who I was teaching on this program years ago, and I said, well, he's like, well, you know how you tell the difference between foods that are acid or alkaline? I said, what's that? And he said, well, the acid ones all taste better. And there's a little bit of truth to that. If you look at most of the engineered foods today, the genetically or highly processed food, the simple sugars and the simple flours and things like that, or the trans fatty foods or the highly cooked foods, almost all of them are acid forming. The fried foods, the acidic foods, all these things, they create a lot of acid inside the system. So what happens is your body, in order to maintain this pH level, they have to take minerals out of your body and buffer the acid in your blood, because you got to keep in that range. Now think about that for a second. Well, how long can I do that? Well, if you look over time, what happens is you start to take these out of your bucket. Remember your whole bucket theory? So you're taking these essential minerals out of your body. And what happens is you start to drain out more than you're using. And what happens is connective tissues and bones. So guys that get their knees start getting sore. A lot of athletes deal with this. Their super physicality, their doing a lot of acid-forming activities or eating acid, high-protein diets, this type of thing. I was one of those guys. And I was producing a lot of acid, and I started getting aches and pains and arthritic stuff. I was also drinking fluids that were acid, sports drinks and sodas back in the day. And this was contributing to the total pool of acids inside my body. And I wasn't eating enough, alkaline foods because I was following the old school bodybuilding program. Not the new school, the old school, which had nothing to do with any of this stuff, like alkalinity. It was just like, protein. That's all you need, right? So that was a mistake. I hope you don't make that mistake too. So what we're doing is you want to reverse the trend with your diet. Number 2, you want to drink alkaline-based waters or alkalized waters. If you haven't checked out our video on alkalized water and the difference between alkalized and alkaline, be sure to check that out. It's a fascinating demonstration. The other thing is you want to eat more raw foods. So raw foods like fruits and vegetables, tend to be more alkaline. If you deep fry your broccoli, you've kind of, wrecked the purpose. The other thing is if you eat a lot of meat, and years ago, early on in my career, I was a big time meat eater. I mean, we grew up, we just had meat with everything, and so I switched completely. I haven't eaten meat in 14 or 15 years. I'm not saying that to make a judgment on anyone. I went the other way. I switched more to an alkaline-based diet. I drank more alkaline-based, type of beverages, and I reduced this level. And guess what happened? Not only did my joints all start feeling better. I didn't have that going on, but now I was able to have more energy, and I was able to eat less proteins because the big benefit on a cellular level is this. Here's your cell, and as our bodies are so amazing. They're so adaptive. When you're in a strong alkaline state, you need less acids to create the effect. Remember, the base of your cells needs to be an alkaline state, and then the acid is kind of like a product that creates a trigger or a response. The more acidic that this area becomes, the bigger hit that you need of acid to produce the result you want. So for example, let's take the thing of a lot of people are coffee drinkers. Coffee is a big deal out there. And there's a lot of research how coffee improves metabolism and suspends appetite, and those are all true, but it also increases acidity inside the body. And this has a long-term effect. So you start out drinking coffee, you have that little coffee, and the first time you take it, you're like, oh wow, I feel like I can run through a wall, and you go to do your workouts and you feel great, and you start noticing you're losing body fat, and you're getting the boost of caffeine and all the stimulants from it, and your brain is all sharp and everything. But then what happens is you've been doing this for a few weeks, and suddenly you get a crash in the afternoon. You're like, oh, you know what? I'll just get another coffee. Okay? And then, a couple months later goes by, and then all of a sudden you start your morning with a bigger coffee. Or you start adding other acids, different kinds of fatty acids and stuff to get an accelerated cook or an accelerated result from that. And pretty soon, you're drinking 2, 3, 4 coffees a day to get the same effect that you were from one. Now, that's not here to make a slight on coffee. I'm just sharing with you that if you're not buffering those acids from your diet, if you're not drinking fluids that are alkalizing your body is going to drain that bucket of resources, and you're going to start getting more acidic, and this is going to change. Now, why is this important? Well, there was a guy by the name of Otto Warburg, and years ago, he found out that cancer goes crazy in a deoxygenated, highly acidic environment. In fact, he won a Nobel Prize for it. You can look this up. So Dr. Otto Warburg, and he said that a cellular environment that had lots of oxygen, okay, and this, just so you know, if you have lots of oxygen in there, that's going to be a more alkaline state. If you got lots of fluid inside there. And so today's world, where we have cancer going crazy, we have people that aren't getting enough oxygen because they're not breathing. We covered that in the first lesson. They're not getting enough hydration inside the cell, so the cell becomes less hydrated, which because of our more acidic diets, we're getting more acid in there. That means that we're starving off the mitochondria is not getting oxygen, and what do we switch to? We switch to dirty fuels, dirty carbohydrates, simple carbohydrates that increase the acid in the body, increases metabolic waste, and guess what? Is a breeding ground for a variety of illnesses that tend to accelerate or have been accelerated in the modern lifestyle. So in this process, you don't have to know all the rules. What you do need to know is try and eat more alkaline-based foods, and we have lists of those. Go to our site if you have questions. Try and reduce the acids, okay? And let's get back to this 80-20 balance. So you can still eat the things that you like, just eat a little less of them, and then find things that are on the alkaline forming side of that. And then if you're really stuck, if you're one of those guys that are right out there, you know, a couple of my business partners, they love their steak and all that sort of stuff, and I'm totally okay with that. But what they do is they offset that with alkalized water. And so revert back to our lesson on that, and we're going to explain how you can buffer the acids and still live at the highest levels so that you keep your cells rocking and rolling at the old 80-20 rule. So I hope you learned a lot today about acid-alkaline balance. We'll talk about this more in some other lessons, or we'll come back to it on our site. And if you have any questions, you know where to go, BiOptimizers.com. Stay with the lessons. We're having so much fun. I'm really glad you're here, and we'll see you on the next one. It's coming up next.